Hey, what's up everybody? Today we're going to do a full Hackintosh install. We're going to stick with macOS Sequoia 15.7.2. It's the latest Sequoia version for right now. Tahoe, I did successfully get to install on my PC, but I have yet to order the correct Broadcom card that will be supported in Tahoe. Let's get started. Let's show you the computer I'm using. This is the old circa 2012 to 2014 Haswell PC case I have. It's a Cooler Master. It's been around the block a few times, so to speak, seen a thing or two. I just wanted to show you what I've been working with all this time. On the back, you can see all the ports. They're all USB-A. There's no USB-C. I have the Fenvi T919 card coming out there. And in the back is the graphics card, RX 580. I've had the fewest headaches with the AMD RX 580. In here you can see the internals. I have a basic cooling fan. I have the Sapphire Brand AMD RX 580, Fenvi T919 card, Corsair CX750M. I believe that's enough wattage to power what we're doing here. In here I have two SSDs, a 500 gigabyte Samsung, which holds Windows 11, and a 1 terabyte SSD, which will hold our macOS installation. I also have a DVD drive that's not connected in favor of the LG M-Disc Blu-ray disc reader. This is an Ultra HD. It allows me to rip Blu-rays up to 4K, and I have videos on my channel about how to do that. That's about it for my hardware. Hey guys, so now we're gonna get into the computer. I've got it all connected. The first thing we're gonna do is get our BIOS configured so it's gonna be suitable for Hackintosh. This is very important to get all your settings right in the BIOS so that Hackintosh doesn't have any problem booting and things can go smoothly for you. So let me take you into the BIOS and show you some of the configuration changes I did. All right, first thing you do, you press delete a couple times and that'll take you to the BIOS. And here you can look at all the BIOS settings I changed. As you can see, I did the XMP, so that's what these timings are about. You don't have to mess with those. I just put the XMP profile in for the RAM speed, so it automatically changed all of these settings. So don't worry about from here on down. I do have Intel virtualization technology enabled. And so you can see the one on the left is the one that I have for Hackintosh, and the one on the right is the default value. I enabled VTD, iGPU multi-monitor I enabled, EHCI handoff I enabled, Bluetooth controller and Wi-Fi controller I disabled in favor of the Wi-Fi Bluetooth card I have, and fast boot is disabled, launch CSM is disabled, and OS type is other OS. So those are all my settings that I changed from the defaults. So if you could take note of those BIOS changes, I do have other videos on my channel about how to configure BIOS for Hackintosh. So please take a look at that for more in-depth detail. But these are all the settings I changed. I am not gonna reset my BIOS actually, because that would take more time for me to reconfigure. So I'm just gonna say no here. So as you can see, I have Windows installed on this computer. So the 500 gigabyte SSD I installed Windows on. And that is going to be what I'm gonna do the installer configuration in, because most of you should have access to Windows for your PC, at least on OneDrive, so that you could boot into Windows as a default environment. So I'm just gonna restart my computer and put my BIOS settings back to the way they were for Hackintosh. And I'm gonna boot into Windows. And then I'll share my screen and we'll take a look at how to get our USB thumb drive configured for installing Hackintosh. So what you're gonna need is a USB thumb drive, about 16 gigabytes or 32 gigabytes. This one's 32. It's a USB 3. I don't think it matters if it's USB 2 or USB 3, except for the speed at which it'll boot. So just give yourself a big enough thumb drive to hold all the configuration files. So just go for like a 32 or something like that. That should be fine. So I'm gonna restart. And I'm gonna boot into Windows. Okay everybody, now that we're into Windows, I'm going to show you some of the devices I have on here from the device manager. So as you can see under display, I have the Radeon RX 580. So that's gonna be minimal headaches with Hackintosh. So use that graphics card or something similar, like a supported Radeon card. You can't use NVIDIA anymore as of the last few releases of macOS. That is what it is. So just get an AMD card and make sure it's supported on the Dortania guide. So everything you look up is gonna come from the Dortania guide. So just type in Dortania OpenCore Hackintosh And this install guide is basically the source of truth for you for installing everything. So this video is just an example about how to install Hackintosh. This document here is the standard which you should reference. There are also a lot of other websites and supporting projects that go into helping Hackintosh, so we're going to be referencing some of those as well. So before we get started, make sure you have enough time, make sure you have enough patience. This isn't going to happen in a few minutes. It's going to take you hours, probably days, the first time you ever do this. Know your hardware, your CPU name and its generation. So what you do is you go to About Your PC, and if you don't know your architecture, look at your CPU, and it says mine is an i7-4770. So what you could do is just type that into Google, i7-4770 architecture, and you can see from Google it just tells you it's Haswell. So that's going to be important for your reference. So now we know the graphics card and we know the Haswell architecture. We know we have a Fenvi T919 Broadcom card. Storage devices, I'm using a standard SSD, so I'm not using NVMe or anything like that. Although you can use NVMe, but you have to see my other guide on how to patch your BIOS to support NVMe. It's a desktop, so it's not OEM, it's basically a custom build. Ethernet is going to be Intel for me, so you could tell that by device manager. You go to network adapters and you can see that it's an Intel network adapter. And proper OS installation, so you need an existing macOS. You could do this from macOS on another device. You could configure your config.plist and your USB in macOS, but you could also do it from Windows. So we're going to do the Windows method today because I feel like anybody who has a Hackintosh also would have a Windows installation as well. You could also do it from Linux. I have videos out there how to do it from Linux too. Basically all the steps apply. You just need to format your USB a certain way depending on what environment you're in. Also, downloading the macOS installer is a little simpler in macOS, of course, but you could still do it in Linux and Windows. It says you need a 15 gigabyte free space on your hard drive. I mean, I would recommend a lot more than that. Latest BIOS installed, just make sure you have at least the latest BIOS. Like again, if you see my other video on how to patch your BIOS to support NVMe booting, you can do it that way, but again, that's risky. So if you want to just update your BIOS to the latest supported BIOS, that's what's recommended. Now that we got that out of the way, let's go to making the installer in Windows. So you need a 4 gigabyte or more USB. I said 16 or 32, whatever. I would recommend something larger just in case. So the Rufus method is what we're going to do. So what you need to do first to do the Rufus method is to download Rufus, and you want to go to the official rufus.ie website and download. I'm just going to download the portable version. I'm not going to actually install it. You can install it. So you run the Rufus program. Click yes there. For a device, you got to select your device. So in order for it to select your device, you need to put your USB into the drive. I usually just click yes for these pop-ups. So I have a USB drive on the E, so I'm going to use that. It's 64 gigs. Let's follow the directions. I click on Rufus method to get to that method. So we want non-bootable, we want GPT, not MBR, and we want BIOS or UEFI for target system. I'm gonna call it USB, you can call it whatever you wanna call it. It should be large, FAT32, and 32 kilobyte cluster size. So once you're sure you have the right USB, you don't mind wiping it out, click start. Okay. So if you go to the USB drive that you just created, there's 2 files auto run. They're both called auto run. They're just different type of files. So just delete those. You don't need those. Next thing you have to do, you have to download the macOS installer. So this is a Sequoia tutorial. So I'm going to download Sequoia. Scroll up to where it says macrecovery.py. Click on that, and that takes you right to the OpenCore package. You're going to need this whole release package to create your USB. So let's just download the release.zip. Let's extract that. Okay, and you're gonna go to this directory in here called Utilities and Mac Recovery. Copy that path and go to PowerShell. One of the prerequisites to running this command is having Python installed. So if you don't have Python installed, go to the Python website and download the latest. Install Python on Windows. After that, change directory to Mac Recovery. Then what you're gonna do is copy this command for the latest version of Sequoia, and it's hard to see when you're selecting it because you can't tell that you're selecting it, but just Control C and Control V, and that's going to download Sequoia 15.7.2. Okay, once that command is complete, it takes about, I don't know, 2-3 minutes, depending on your internet speed. go to your downloads, go to the expanded OpenCore release zip, and go to utilities, Mac recovery. And in that folder, you should have com.apple.recovery.boot. That's the files that are just downloaded. And in there, you should see a base system DMG and a base system chunk list. This is your recovery system to install macOS. So copy this whole folder, com.apple.recovery.boot. Copy that into your USB and paste it. Give that a minute to copy because it's quite a large couple of files. Okay, that copy is completed. So I have com.apple.recovery.boot on the root of my USB drive. And inside of there are my base system chunk list and base system DMG files. That's a really good start. Now what we have to do is create our EFI folder, and this is going to basically configure the virtualization or spoofing of a Mac hardware so we could get this operating system to boot. So what we do is we go to our downloads, get this folder, OpenCore x64 EFI. Copy that, and I like to work out of my desktop. I feel like it's a lot easier to find when I'm going back and forth. So I'm gonna paste this EFI folder here. I'm gonna close my terminal for now. What we're gonna do is go to the guide, and now we have to go to adding the base OpenCore files. Obviously 32-bit is not really relevant anymore, so we're not gonna do 32-bit. 64-bit is what we're doing, and I'm doing the release version. You can do the debug version. There's a lot more information, but it takes a lot longer to boot. So Windows users, it tells you where to put it. I told you right now we're just gonna work out of our desktop because that's gonna be like our work zone, and then we're gonna copy things into our USB drive when we're ready. First thing we're gonna do is delete most of the files in some of the folders. So the drivers and tools folders have a lot of files and we don't need most of them. So what we do need is reset NVRAM entry.efi and open runtime EFI. Let's go to our desktop, EFI, OC, drivers. And let's select all of them by doing Control A, and then Control click Open Runtime and Reset NVRAM, and let's delete the rest of them. Also, in your tools, Control A, select them all, and unselect by control clicking OpenShell.efi. That's the only file you want to keep in this folder. Delete all the rest. Okay, so your folder should look a lot like the one in the screenshot. And then now we have to go into gathering our files. So click gathering files. So here you should read carefully. Based on your hardware, you're going to gather different files into this EFI folder under firmware drivers. We do need HFS Plus and Open Runtime. So let's go to HFS Plus. Let's download that. Open that in downloads and Control C to copy that. Go to your desktop, EFI, OC, drivers, and paste that in there. Now we already have Open Runtime, so that's the other one it says you need. The other ones I don't need for my hardware, so I'm gonna skip those. You do need Lilu and you do need Virtual SMC, so let's go to Lilu, go to the release version, and I'm gonna download that, open it up, extract all, and just copy the kext folder, not the kext.dsym. macOS looks at this as a file, but it's actually in fact a folder. But in Windows, it looks like a folder. You could tell that it's a folder because if you click on it, double click, it opens it. But we don't want to do that. We just want to copy the whole lilu.kext. Copy that to your desktop, EFI, OC, kext. Also Virtual SMC, click that link, go to release, download that zip, extract all, go to kext, and you want, for my hardware, I want Virtual SMC, that's absolutely required, but I also want Super IO and SMC processor. For those of you with laptops, you may want to consider some of the other ones. Desktop, EFI, OC, kext, and paste those in there. Okay, so now keep going down. If you have AMD, you're gonna want to look at some of these other drivers. For graphics, you need whatever green. So I download whatever green, get the latest zip, extract that, copy whatever green. Desktop, EFI, OC, kext, and paste that in there. All right, keep going down. Apple ALC, if you want to use your onboard audio, you want to consider using this. For me, I use USB audio for everything, so I just disregard the audio section, but that's something to consider on your side. For Ethernet, I use Intel Mousy because I have the Intel NIC, and that's the right one for me, because I've figured that out a long time ago, so I just keep downloading this guy and I go to the latest. This is for Ethernet. Extract it and go to Desktop, EFI, OC, kext, and paste that in there. Okay, so the next thing we can do is map our USB. So first go to Tool, we go to Tags and go to O.2, that's the latest and greatest. Download windows.exe, I know it looks a little sketch calling it windows.exe, but that's what it is. Let's double click that. And that's what this is gonna do is map your USB ports. So macOS has this 15 port limit thing in their operating system, and they need to have all your ports mapped properly in your motherboard. What you do first is hit discover ports. All right, that just discovered all my ports. Now what you could do is take a thumb drive and insert it in all your ports. Take a USB 2 thumb drive, take a USB 3 thumb drive, and put them in all your ports one by one. I have videos on how to do this, but basically you want to activate all the ports. So if I take a second thumb drive and insert it into each port, you see that the screen is refreshing every 5 seconds or so. And it's going to discover that those ports are active. Go ahead and map that. So once you do that, you hit back, D, and then you say S, select ports and build kext. And then I say K, build utbmap.kext. And then that goes and builds a utbmap.kext folder. So what you want to do is copy that, go to your desktop, EFI OC kext, and paste that in there. That's your particular mapping for your particular computer. You need a companion file for this. You need the kext link here under your USB toolbox. Go to tags, 1.2.0 is the latest right now. Download the latest USB toolbox release, extract that, and copy USB toolbox.kext. Put that into desktop, EFI, OC, kext. So the USB toolbox works with the UTB map. You may want to consider some other drivers for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. If you have Intel, Broadcom. Next step is SSDTs. So SSDTs are important. They help with certain critical components of the operating system. So go to your architecture, for mine it's Haswell, and go to the CPU. I just have to use this right here. You could use the pre-built ones. They're a little bloated, but they will probably work for you. Or you could use SSDT time, or you can manually build them. So I'm gonna use SSDT time since I'm on Windows, and click on the easy way here and click on SSDT time. And let's download that code by going download zip, all right? Open that, extract that. Now, based on this chart over here, you need to know which SSDTs you need to generate. So I need plug here, and I need EC. Those are the most critical ones. Plug is for power, and EC is for basic overall operating system things. So I'm gonna do plug and EC. So we're gonna go back to that window, and I'm gonna say 5 for plugin type. And it's asking you to drag and drop the ACPI table or folder structure here. So I'm gonna say P dump the current system's ACPI tables. Okay, enter. Let's try to go back to our folder and see what we have. In downloads, SSDT time master, we have results. And here we have SSDT plug. So that's good. So let's do the next one. We need fake EC. So I'm gonna do 2, and then I'm gonna press enter. Let's close this window. As you can see, I have SSDT EC and SSDT plug. That being there, you want the AML files. The DSL files are the source code. You want the compiled AML files. So control, click SSDT EC and SSDT plug, or any other files you might have needed for your hardware. Copy that to desktop, EFI, OC, ACPI, and place that in there. All right, that was fun. All right, now we have most of our files gathered. Next thing we're gonna do is get our config.plist set up. So what we have to do is go to your downloads, go to OpenCore release, go to docs, and you see sample.plist, copy that file, go to desktop, EFI, OC, paste it right there in OC folder. Now it says sample.plist, you wanna rename this file to config.plist, all lowercase. You need a particular program to edit this file. You can't just go in and edit it as a text file, which you could probably try to do, but it would probably get corrupted very quickly. So you need to, and I'm gonna close some of these tabs. You need to go to a new tab and say download property. And then this is a Python program, which you'll depend on Python again here. So download that, open that up, extract it, and go to master and run the property batch file. Okay, this gives you a little window here. So go to File, Open, and go to Desktop, EFI, OC, config.plist, and open that config.plist and maximize it, I guess, or make it large enough so that you could work on it. So you'll get familiar with this program. There's a few quirks, ins and outs of how to use this program, but basically just follow the directions and take your time. Be patient, and editing this file is basically, this combined with gathering the right files in your EFI folder are the critical steps in getting your Hackintosh to boot properly. Just take your time, pay attention, and don't get frustrated if it doesn't boot right away. You have to come back in, you'll have to change your configs, and you'll have to add more files or delete more files from your EFI and keep trying this till you get it to work. So basically be patient. I'm gonna delete the warnings at the top and then Control S. First thing you do is File, OC Clean Snapshot, and select the desktop EFI OC folder. This is going to read all the files that we've gathered and put them in this config.plist in the proper places so we know that they're loaded. Control S. All right, let's go back to the guide and let's go to Haswell and let's follow these steps. So they have little screenshots and they basically give you an indicator on what to look for, but you really want to read through all the text and make sure you understand what you're doing. All right, the first major one we have is device properties. Device properties has to do a lot with the graphics card. So I'm gonna follow this guide here. I'm gonna add a new node here and I'm gonna go Control F for device properties. So you see there's one already there. I'm gonna go under add and say new child under add. And I'm gonna paste in this string from the guide. And I'm gonna change that to a dictionary. I'm going to add, you need to add this key right here, AAPL IG platform ID. And I'm gonna add a new child under here. And I'm gonna paste that key in there. And I'm gonna call that a data. And I'm gonna use desktop Haswell iGPU only for computing tasks and not to drive a display. So I'm going to use this value here. So I'm going to put that in there. Okay. And device ID is going to be this number. So I'm going to add a new string for device ID, new child under here, paste that key and change it to data and copy this number here, put it here. Okay. So that's the graphics card configuration. For the original layout ID, that's for audio injection. So I'm just gonna delete that because I don't use the audio on board. So, all right, next thing we do is come down to kernel and we're gonna change some of these settings. They highlight them for us, but you should also read through down and below it and see what it is that they're talking about. So we don't wanna go quickly and we don't wanna go blind. So I'm gonna Control F for Apple CPU PM config lock, and it says to make that false, which it is, and XCPM should be true. Let's change that to true. SMBIOS GUID is false already, and disable IO mapper is true. Lapid kernel panic is not relevant, and panic no kex dump is true, and power timeout kernel panic is true. All right, go to miscellaneous. We're gonna look for Apple debug, and that should be true for now. Apple panic should be true. Target should be 67. Make sure our numlock is on, 67. Scan policy should be 0. SecureBootModel should be disabled. Don't put it to default, disabled. And vault optional. Hide auxiliary can be no, because if you have it on yes, you have to keep hitting the space bar when you're booting to see the other options. So I could say hide auxiliary to false. That's just gonna make my life a little less stressful. Okay, NVRAM. So let's go down there to boot args. And there's a lot to boot args. You could do a lot in there. For me, I'm gonna keep it verbose with -v. Keep sims as 1. Debug equals 0x100. ALC ID equals 1 has to do with the onboard audio, which I'm not doing. Okay. And csr-active-config is related to SIP, which is the security layer in macOS. And to get my Wi-Fi and Bluetooth working, I will have to disable SIP, but we will do that at a later step. So let's just leave that as 0s for now. Previous line keyboard, if you don't want it to be Russian, you want to set this to English, US if you're from the US. So you can put this to whatever language you want your keyboard to be at. So it tells you that American English is this hex string right here. So I'm going to put that right here. If you don't do that step, you might be surprised by what language you're greeted with. All right. This part is very important. This is the SMBIOS. This is what model that the macOS thinks it is. The SMBIOS is what you tell macOS you are. Like is it a Mac Pro? Is it an iMac? MacBook Pro? Whatever. So the platform info is very important. And to do that, you need to go into the Gen SMBIOS application. So click on Gen SMBIOS and click code download zip. Open this up, extract it, and double click on Gen SMBIOS Windows batch file. Run that. So now we want to generate SMBIOS. Now I've already generated my SMBIOS in another config that I'm already using elsewhere. So I'm just gonna show you how this works. I'm not gonna use the actual numbers that are generated here, but I know for my computer, I'm a Mac Pro 7.1. How do I know that? Well, you need to try different things, and sometimes switching your SMBIOS can really help or hurt you. So you want to go to this guide here. If you go to Monterey SMBIOS, it says some things here, but if you keep going down, there's actually a devoted page to SMBIOSes. So if you say Hackintosh, OpenCore, select SMBIOS, choosing the right SMBIOS, there's a guide here, and you want to match basically on your CPU and GPU, primarily your GPU. So basically Mac Pro 7.1 is supported by my operating system Sequoia, and they support a dedicated GPU. You can see that it's Radeon Pro 580X, so it's kind of similar to what I have. So this works best for me, and it says it's last supported current. So that's my SMBIOS. You could try iMac from like 19.1 up to 20.2 based on your graphics card and architecture. This is Coffee Lake, this is Comet Lake. So now that we have decided on our SMBIOS, you just type it in here, Mac Pro 7.1, and you're given numbers. So I'm not going to use these actual numbers in my final config, but what the hell, I'll use it for the video demo. What you want to do first, before you start using these numbers, you want to copy the serial number, Control C, go to a new tab and just go to a thing called check coverage, Apple, and go to check Apple coverage, enter your serial number by pasting it in, and put this CAPTCHA in here. Very annoying. If you see the serial number you've entered isn't valid, please try again. That means it's good. That means the serial number isn't used by any other devices in the whole world, so you can take it. So that's a good serial number. So go ahead and take this window on the one side and take your proper tree on the other side, and you're gonna put the serial number in, well, you want to go to platform info, and you want to put the serial number under system serial number. You want to put the board serial, and all these numbers have to be right. Under MLB, you want SMUUID, copy that string, exactly, and put that under system UUID, and Apple ROM goes under ROM. Control S, very good. Going back to the guide, UEFI, ignore invalid flex ratio should be true. That should be about it. But we already set our BIOS properly. Well, we hope we did. And this is going to be now our first try at booting from this USB. So the USB should already be in your computer. So now what we do is we take our desktop EFI, Control C, paste that right into the root of your USB drive. And I like to work out of my desktop just because if I make mistakes or I can make backups easily, I'll work out of that and then copy it to my USB so that I don't accidentally lose something or make a mistake and not be able to recover from it. So that's why I like that workflow. But yeah, basically as long as you copy your EFI to the root of the USB drive, right next to your com.apple.recovery.boot, we're gonna restart the computer and see if we can even boot into Sequoia. Okay, press delete a couple of times when you see this window. All right, now you have an extra UEFI option. So let's move that to the front. So the USB UEFI is in the front. And exit and save changes and reset. I like to do this rather than just booting directly from the boot option because when I do consecutive restarts, it's really nice to have that be the first option. Okay, so you see all the boot options now because we turned hide auxiliary off in our config. So you can see that USB external DMG, that's the one that's going to bring us to our installer. Disregard Macintosh hard drive and all these other ones. That's my previous installation. I'm gonna wipe that out and show you how to do it from scratch. Let's just hope this boots. You're gonna, because you're in verbose mode, you should have a bunch of text on the screen. If we did something wrong, it will get stuck and we'll try again. And that's basically part of the process. So when you click USB external DMG, you're gonna sit there at the OK probably for a few minutes. Rest assured it is loading. All right, because I have this other macOS installation, I got this screen. I'm gonna put my password in. That's not something that you would be greeted with initially. So let me just put my password in. This is what you would normally be greeted with when you first boot up if the installer works correctly. So congratulations, you made it to the installer. That was by far the hardest part. What you wanna do is go to Disk Utility and go to View, Show All Devices, and find your disk that you're going to install macOS on. Make sure it's not your Windows installation. Make sure it's a separate disk altogether. I mean, you could do it on the same disk with a different partition, but I don't recommend that at all. I recommend separate disks. All right, so here you can see I have my Windows installation. So here's my disk for macOS that I'm going to right mouse click and hit erase on the disk itself. And I'm going to call it Macintosh HD, but you can call that whatever you want. And APFS GUID partition map. Those are the two settings you want for format and scheme. And go ahead and hit erase. Okay, you should get a erase process is complete. Click done to continue. All right, that's done. Now close this disk utility and go to reinstall macOS Sequoia. Hit continue. Hit continue. After a minute or so, you'll get the software license. Click agree. Hit agree again. Select your Macintosh HD or whatever you called your disk. Click that and click continue. And now just let the magic happen. As long as your SecureBootModel was set to disabled and not default, you shouldn't get this infinite boot loop. If you use default for your SecureBootModel, you'll get a boot loop after this thing starts installing. So you don't want that. So make sure you put that SecureBootModel to disabled. We are going to just sit here and wait for this thing to install. It could take upwards of like 45 minutes or so. The time it tells you it's installing varies. So just let this thing install. All right, so you can see a bunch of text after every reboot. That's just a good thing. As long as it keeps coming through with fresh logs, that means it's processing the install. If it just gets stuck and frozen at one particular step, or it continuously loops through the same steps over and over again, you've done something wrong. Well, congratulations, you made it to the macOS welcome screen. macOS has been successfully installed on your SSD, and now we just go through.
macOS contains a built-in screen reader called VoiceOver. If you know how to use VoiceOver, press Command F5 now to turn it on and set up your Mac. If you would like to learn how to use VoiceOver to set up your Mac, press the Escape key.
Okay, well, we're not going to do that, but that's pretty cool that the sound is already working. I have my USB audio device already plugged in, so that's what we were hearing. So I'm going to go down to United States, click continue. I've ran into problems running Migration Assistant here. Sometimes it doesn't work too well. I highly recommend just doing setup as new. All right, put your name in. I'll give it a password. Creating the Mac account might take a minute. Now it wants to sign in with your Apple iCloud. As long as you got your unique serial number, this should have no problem. After you sign in with your iCloud, it'll ask for a verification code on one of your other iOS devices or macOS devices. Setting up the iCloud account can take a few minutes as well. Okay, you can customize your settings here. Okay, click continue, click continue. All right. We're in macOS Sequoia. We've successfully installed this onto your SSD. We are logged in, we are configured. One thing left to do now is, well, two things left to do now. We have to get Wi-Fi working. So if you see here, Wi-Fi is not working. We also have to get off the USB installer and get the login to look a little better than just having all that text when you're booting up. There's a couple more steps to do. I'm gonna install OBS and screen share those steps here. First thing I want to do is definitely back up this EFI. So go to USB and copy this EFI. Put that on your desktop. Make sure that's saved because that's a good one. You don't want to lose that. You'll see all these other files on here. These are all your debug install logs. You know, if anything went wrong, you could look through these files and see what went down with the installer. But everything works great. First try, which is good. And so now what I'm going to do is copy this EFI and say I'll call this original. I'll call this EFI.original. So if I ever mess up and have to come back to the original that works, I'll have that. So now we have EFI here on my desktop. I'm going to download Proper Tree on macOS now. Proper Tree, download zip. Open that up. Now you have to, I think, control click. Open with terminal. It's gonna block you from opening it, so you have to go to privacy and security under system settings. All right, so you have to go to settings, privacy and security. You can search right here for privacy and security. Scroll all the way down to the bottom here, and Proper Tree command was blocked to protect your Mac. You wanna click open anyway, open anyway. Put in your password. All right, now first time it's gonna install Python on the Mac. So just click Y for yes. Put your password in. This Python installer takes a minute. Once that's done installing, it'll automatically open Proper Tree. So do File, Open, go to your desktop, EFI, OC, config.plist. You want this open, get it ready to go. Now, to get Wi-Fi working, we need a couple files. It comes from a little tutorial I found. If you just search on Broadcom OpenCore Hackintosh Sonoma Wi-Fi, you might get some of my videos actually. I did get this done in a video on my channel already. Here we go. So here's the card I have, the Fenvi T919. And it tells you exactly how to get this working. Click this link here, and this takes you to this folder here. Let's do this in a new tab. Okay, so it says we need ioskywalkfamily.txt. So let's download ioskywalkfamily.zip. Let's download that. Click on it, up here, click download. Unzip that. Let's copy that text by Command C. Now everything's Command in Mac OS, not Control. Go to your desktop, EFI, OC, kex, and place that ioskywalkfamily.txt. Also, you need to do a few other config settings. You need to disable SIP, so copy this value here, 03080000, and put that in your csr-active-config. csr-active-config. Oh, type that right. And instead of all zeros, we're going to paste that number. Command S to save. Also, you need to disable AMFI. So we could just simply do that by putting a boot arg together. Under boot args, add AMFI equals 0x80. Control S. Make sure you still have SecureBootModel disabled. And this is a critical step. You need to block IO Skywalk family, setting min kernel to 23.0.0. So if you go here and you Command F for block and go to a couple searches and then go to block here, you'll see that you have IO Skywalk family min version 23.0.0. That's exactly what they're talking about. You need to enable this block here. So this is enabling IO Skywalk family to be blocked, excluding 23.0.0 min kernel. All that, just flip this to true, and that should do it. If all goes well, we're going to reboot. We should be able to download OpenCore Legacy Patcher and be able to root patch the Wi-Fi. So let's reboot first. We're going to clear NVRAM, and then we're going to reboot again after resetting NVRAM, and come back in here and install OpenCore Legacy Patcher. One critical step, open back up Proper Tree. You should be able to this time to just double click it. Open your EFI, make sure you go File, OC Snapshot, and select the current OC directory on your desktop. Okay, that's got to add that IO Skywalk family text that we just added to your config.plist. Now you can close the config.plist. Also, don't forget, we're going to copy this EFI folder onto our EFI partition of our boot disk and get rid of the USB. We're going to hang on to this USB. It boots. It's a good USB, and it won't have Wi-Fi, but it'll save us in a pinch if we can't get into the operating system for some other reason. So we're going to do one other step here. Go to a browser, search up Mount EFI, download that bad boy. Download, you want the Corp Newt Mount EFI GitHub project. Go to code, download zip, and you're gonna do the same thing you did with Property. Double click it, it's gonna say move to trash. Go to system settings, don't move it to trash. Go to system settings, go to privacy and security. Scroll all the way down and say open anyway. Open anyway, put your password in. All right, now it gives you a list of all drives. So you want to press 2 for Macintosh hard drive or whatever number you have. Put your password in. And now you should have this thing called an EFI partition right down in here with nothing in it. This is a fresh install, so you have nothing in your EFI partition. Literally just copy this EFI from your desktop that you just added and changed, and put that in your EFI partition right here. So your EFI partition will have a folder called EFI, and inside of there you have boot in OpenCore. So we are going to eject the USB and save that for backup plans in case something goes wrong. So let's eject the USB and let's reboot. Press delete a couple times. All right, you get your UEFI, put your macOS UEFI on the first boot option. Click exit, save changes and reset, yes. Now it should automatically boot to your drive with macOS on it. You're gonna go down and click reset NVRAM, reset NVRAM. Now we have to go back into the BIOS and reset our boot options again. Press delete. Put that back to the first one, press exit, save and reset. All right, now it should automatically boot to the macOS OpenCore boot picker. Don't let it choose Windows, go down to Macintosh hard drive. All right, now you got the login screen. It's still very verbose. We're gonna fix that after we get Wi-Fi working. You might get this keyboard identification window, just follow the directions. Okay, we're back into macOS. We still don't have Wi-Fi, and that's to be expected. What we should be able to do now, hopefully, is install OCLP, OpenCore Legacy Patcher. So click on this. Well, actually, you need to get the right link. You want the GitHub project. You want to go to tags and download the latest OpenCore Legacy Patcher. Right now it's 2.4.1. Go to the OpenCore patcher.pkg, download that. Now this is just installing the program to your applications. This isn't actually patching your computer yet. All right, that's done. Move that to trash. Now let's run OpenCore Legacy Patcher, and let's hope that it doesn't yell at me, because sometimes you need all these settings like SIP disabled properly and things. Do post install root patch. File Vault is enabled. So by default, File Vault is enabled on macOS, and you can't have that enabled to install the root patches. So let's go to return to main menu and close that. So we have to disable File Vault. So go to System Settings, search for File Vault, and let's try to turn that off. Put your password in. Now turn off encryption, and it says 3 hours remaining. Let's see how long it actually takes. It's got to decrypt my whole hard drive now, so what a pain. Let's see how long this actually takes. Now it's down to 12 minutes all of a sudden. Now it's 9 minutes. This might take about 9 or 10 minutes. Let's check back in a second. All right, guys, File Vault has been decrypted, so it's off. So let's go and try this OpenCore Legacy Patcher one more time. All right, guys, so when you're doing your OpenCore Legacy Patcher, you need to make sure the internal graphics card is not activated in Sequoia. You can't have the iGPU on, so you need to go to your BIOS and make sure that the iGPU is turned off. And you also can do this right from the config.plist. So in the original configuration, I told you to configure your device properties for the iGPU. But in fact, if you want to patch for Wi-Fi, you only need to patch the Wi-Fi. If you patch the graphics, you'll get a black screen next time you reboot, and that's bad because then you can't get into your computer. Let's open Proper Tree, and I'm going to open my EFI config.plist. And if you go to Device Properties, Control F or Command F, Device Properties, where I had originally told you to configure your iGPU, you actually want to disable the iGPU. This is for getting Wi-Fi to work. You don't want to patch the graphics for internal GPU. You need an external graphics card. You want to, for PCI root 0x0, PCI 0x2, 0x0, this one, you want to put disable GPU and put that as a Boolean and make it true. This is very important before you patch OpenCore Legacy Patcher. Do that and copy that using mount EFI, copy that to your EFI partition of your boot drive. Once you do that and you reboot, you gotta reboot with that disabled GPU set. Then you can go ahead and run OpenCore Legacy Patcher. And when you click post install root patch, it should only say modern wireless. It should not say Intel Haswell graphics. Don't patch that if you see that. So if it says graphics here, don't patch it. So just go ahead and patch the modern wireless only. Start root patching. And then you just gotta reboot to apply this patch. Okay, one kext I forgot to include is IO80211 family legacy.kext. Forgot to have you do that in the original one, so let's do that. You want the family legacy as well as the Skywalk family that I originally had you include. So I apologize for not mentioning the 80211 family legacy. Let's download that, open that up. Let's copy that to your EFI on your desktop, OC kext, and that's one that we're missing. So as you can see, I still don't have Wi-Fi yet, so let's add that. Let's go to the Proper Tree and open your desktop EFI and do File, OC Snapshot, select your OC directory, Command S, and then close that out, and let's go to Mount EFI and select your hard drive, put your password in, copy this EFI to your EFI partition, click Replace. Let's try to reboot again and see if we get Wi-Fi. Okay, and that was the missing ingredient, those two kexts there, IO80211 family legacy kext and the IO Skywalk family kext. Those two kexts need to be present. You need to have that block that I told you to put on your config.plist, and you need to have amfi boot arg 0x80. So those things are critical to have before you patch. But if you piece it together and you go ahead and you reboot, you'll see that you have Wi-Fi enabled. I have another video on my channel that step-by-step goes through this a little more clearly, but yeah, you can get Wi-Fi working and in Sequoia with the Broadcom T919 Fenvi card. So now that that's all complete, you have a perfectly working Hackintosh. Now what we can do is just get the icons and get rid of the verbose text. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we'll work out of our desktop EFI, and I'm gonna back this up as, this is gonna be good verbose. I'll call this EFI.good.verbose. Okay, so the one we're going to work out of is EFI, and we're going to make this be non-verbose and more of just an Apple logo when you're booting. So what you do is go to the Dortania guide, type in Dortania, post install, steps, go to, we already got booting without USB going. You want to get off your debug kext if you have any of those installed. You just release kext. Your Apple iMessages should work and everything as long as your serial number was good. Power management, using the RX 580, I'm able to wake up from sleep, so that's pretty good. If you have power management issues, you want to visit this link here. And fixing sleep, if you have any sleep issues, you want to go there as well. So power management is more for how fast your computer idles and things like that. Sleep is for waking up from hibernation and things. So after that, go down to add GUI and boot chime. If you have onboard audio, you can do the boot chime. I don't do that myself. I usually just do the GUI part of it. Setting up OpenCore's GUI. There's a couple things you want to do to get out of debug mode. So first you want to go to fixing resolution and verbose. So let's get rid of the verbose. So let's open up proper tree, open up your desktop EFI, okay, and let's follow the guide. So miscellaneous debug, Apple debug should be false. NVRAM, we're going to remove the boot arg of -V, get rid of -V. Miscellaneous debug target should be 3, not 67. Okay, make sure you're on, like I said, the release version of everything. If you don't have the release version, you might want to do that because it'll be faster and less verbose. Next thing you want to do is add the GUI. So go to binary resources, download that, go to code, download zip, open that up, go to resources, just copy this whole resources folder and go to your EFI folder, OC, and just paste it here, overwrite the current resources folder. That's going to give you all the images and everything you need for booting with the graphics. So then we have to just configure it. So picker mode should be external. Let's go back to our proper tree. Picker mode is external. Picker attributes is 17. Picker variant, you could choose which graphical icons you want to use. So I'm just going to do auto. And boot chime is something you can do optionally, just follow the directions. All right, now that that's all set, let's go ahead and try to reboot. Okay, one thing I forgot to do is add the Open Canopy EFI. This is important if you want the graphical picker. So go to OpenCore package and download the release yet again. And once that's expanded, you can go to x64 EFI OC drivers, and you have to have Open Canopy. So copy that, put that in your desktop EFI OC drivers, paste that in there, and then open up proper tree yet again. Do file open recent desktop EFI and do file OC snapshot and choose your OC directory. Save that file, go to downloads, mount EFI, mount your hard drive EFI, and copy that desktop EFI to your EFI partition. As you can see, we don't have any debug files anymore. Click replace, and let's see if we have the graphical picker. And there you go, here's your graphical picker. Looks a little bit like a Mac. You got your Windows. If you're gonna boot Windows, I would recommend going from the BIOS. Otherwise, Windows will think you're booting from a Mac. It's kind of a little weird when that happens. You may have some hardware issues, etc. So I highly recommend booting Windows straight from the BIOS and not from here. But you could hide that if you want in the config.plist. You could hide the other picker options, but just choose Mac hard drive here, and there's your Apple logo. So it's nice and clean, and everything kind of works the way you would expect almost a Mac to work. Guys, thanks for watching. I hope this wasn't too boring for you. I hope you're able to get your Hackintosh up and running. Again, as you can see, I even made mistakes along the way, and you're gonna make mistakes too. The thing is to learn from them, to have patience, take your time, and eventually, once you keep trying, then you can hopefully achieve your goal and get your Hackintosh up and running. That being said, it's obvious that Apple is moving away from the Intel support, so we're going into the M chip series support only for macOS starting after Tahoe. So just keep in mind that this Hackintosh is probably a temporary solution until they figure something else out in the Hackintosh community, such as emulating an M chip, or I don't know what they would do to get Hackintosh to work in the future. But this is a really great solution for now. Sequoia is probably the most stable operating system that's available. I will, when I get a new Wi-Fi card, show the Tahoe installation. So if you want to get the latest and greatest cutting edge, bleeding edge operating system, you can go with Tahoe. So I will come out with a video in the next few weeks with that. Stay tuned. In the meantime, I hope this was helpful for you, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, enjoy your Christmas holiday season.